bad for us. But here we go. You ready?
I'm all set.
Welcome.
Thank you.
What do you think would be the most important quality or skill for the next bishop of El Camino Real to possess?
Perfect. So I think the next Bishop of El Camino Real is what you've articulated, which is somebody with vision and who's relational. You're looking for somebody who's going to walk alongside of you, so the relational aspect, but as a clear or can help you think about what it is that we're going toward. I think that's important. That is something that I'm very much a part of. I mean, that's who I am. I love a sense of sort of vision with things. So I'd like to put a vision out to you as a sense about where we might be going as a diocese. And I'm wondering about the sense of community here. And I'm wondering about, in Silicon Valley, they are trying to figure out what the next wave of innovation is in Silicon Valley, right? Wall Street wants to bet on it. And I'm wondering if the next wave of innovation might be community and what that would look like. And what the effects of that would be if we began to, as just human beings, value our connectivity to each other. Like what would that do to income inequality? Or what would that do to immigration? What would that do to climate change and so on? And so I'm wondering if the Episcopal Church of the Diocese of El Camino Real could be the spark to create that and what that would look like. You know, often I think about our assets that we have here in the diocese and which ones are underutilized or not. And personally, I see that our deacons really are underutilized part of our diocesan family. My understanding of deacons is that they embody the humility and servant ministry of Jesus, and they dwell in the needs of the world, right? And I think of those who are on the outside of the church looking in, and I think they're looking for authentic expressions of the Christian faith. And once they see that, they begin to trust it, then they begin to trust the organization that's a part of that. I think in the church we think of deacons as sub-priests. Sometimes deacons are asked, when are you going to be ordained a priest? When in fact that's their vocational call. I think the church itself, that vision and the relational aspect, is that we're called to do exactly what our deacons are called to do, which is to go forward with humility, to go forward and do the servant ministry of Jesus, and to dwell in the needs of the world. In order to do that, you have to be self-aware of what your reactivity is to the situations that you're trying to minister to. So you're not walking in, you're not saying, hey, I know exactly how to solve your problem. Or here, if you just understood a little bit more theology, everything would roll out really well. Instead, you are with them, caring for whatever anxiety gets cultivated because of the situation you're present to. But together you follow the pain into the greater story, and then you begin to create real change. So I would love to see our bishop, our next bishop, have that kind of vision, that larger vision of who we might become to the greater community, but also the invitation to bring us all along with that vision.
What are the most important moral issues facing America today? And what should be the role of the Episcopal Church and Episcopalians in addressing them? Are you aware of the public policy network recently established among the 6 dioceses of California? How would you encourage and participate with this group?
Great, thank you. So I'm not aware of the public policy network. I am aware of what the 6 dioceses do publish, and I'm very much in favor. I think it's those are great statements that I see coming out. I am aware of the Episcopal Public Network that's granted in Washington, D.C. They're an advocacy group for us. They do great work on our behalf. So I see the greatest moral issues that we're dealing with are things that I've already sort of mentioned: immigration, right, income inequality, gun control, I think climate change is the other one I wanted to sort of say. And you know, what I think about in terms of our diocese is that we pass a resolution at convention, but we have no way to do the ongoing work around that resolution. So at the last convention, we passed we wanted to be a sanctuary diocese, right? And that was good, and we invited our parishes to enter into that dialogue. But then there's no way for us as a diocese to engage in that issue around immigration. Like, there's no mechanism around that. I would love to engage our clericus meetings around these moral issues and to say, hey, how do we think deeply about these issues? Like, what's climate change? What's the theology behind care of creation? Like, what about kinship of creation that we all share in this sense that we're created by God? That, in fact, our worship is nothing more than giving voice to what creation is already doing and praising God. The end of the book of Psalms says, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. So I'm wondering about that kind of mechanism. If we can create some kind of mechanism and use our clericus meetings to kind of deepen that. The Diocese of San Joaquin, right now, they're on a pilgrimage. They're walking from Fresno to Sacramento and will arrive on the Action Day of Immigration. How did they do that? No, seriously. Like, how did they do that as a diocese? I understand Caro Hall in Los Osos is the champion of creation. But without Caro, would we engaged in it? Would we have a conference in September to draw us into that? If I was called as your bishop, I would want to figure out a way where we could all engage in these issues. Right? I know there are going to be differences about and opinions about these, which is fine. But what are the theological underpinnings that we should be considering? Death with dignity is another one. As a pastor, that's a really scary experience. I want to say, someone comes to me, which has happened twice, and said, look, I'm going to take my own life on March 15th. What do you think about that? Right? Pastorally, feel terrible that all the pain that they're going through. And then they ask, would that have any jeopardy on my afterlife? Well, I haven't thought, we as clergy, we need to be talking about the pastoral reality of this and the theological reality and prepare ourselves for that moment which we all at some point walk into. So I would love to, again, get something going so we can engage these issues as a diocesan family, really move them forward, because again, I think the expectation for those outside the church is that we would have something to say. And I'd like to see us have something to say.
The role of a bishop is demanding. How do you practice self-care? What do you do to renew yourself? Is there anything that we in the diocese can do to support our bishop's self-care?
All right, great. So the end of that, which is what you could do to support your bishop's self-care, I would say one thing. Ask them if they're spending time with their family. And ask them when they spend time with their family. It's really easy for clergy to like to be needed, and there's a need in front of you, and people are grateful for that, and you end up neglecting yourself and neglecting your family. And so the best thing you can do is really hold that person accountable to make sure that they're caring for the relationships that are most important in your life. My daughter Olivia, as you can see, she's important in my life. She is a great mirror for me, and I want to tell you a really funny story about that. So at dinner time, we always say grace. We hold hands and we say the Lord's Prayer. So this particular night, we're holding hands, closing our eyes, saying the Lord's Prayer, and Mary tapped my foot halfway through it. My wife did, and she said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Look at Olivia." And this is what Olivia looked like. And I said, why is she doing that? She said, because that's what you look like when you pray. I said, Those who are closest to us, they hold up that really important mirror and keep us all in check. My self-care starts with them. On a daily basis, I get up very early in the morning. I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and that's when I have my Sabbath time. So I start with morning prayer. The opening words are, Lord, open up my lips and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. The first thing I want to do each morning is something about God. It just makes the rest of the day and everything else work. So I say morning prayer. I like the way that the scripture passages give me something to think about. Often they do speak to me, and I would like to pray on that. Then I spend time doing centering prayer, of really surrendering to the presence of God that I'm now more engaged in and aware of. That's where I feel the real nourishment takes place, to just really feel filled up to be that new creation, to feel that sense of renewal and inspiration to do the ministry that I've called to do. And then I always journal about what happened. Sometimes it's a sentence, sometimes it's several pages. So that's one of the things I do for my self-care. Secondly, I love to write. I love to write about meditations for the parish. So each Lent, I put together a meditation booklet called God on the Go. There's short ways to connect to God in that particular season, in that particular moment. And I just enjoy sharing what comes out of my prayer life and encouraging others to find that connection as well, which is so renewing. Physical education is important to me. I mean, physical fitness is. It's important, though. Now I'm in maintenance mode just because of the call itself. But I'm better if I have a goal in mind. I'm a sort of goal-oriented person. I need that vision that I'm going for. So 10K, half marathon, or I need to climb that. So it's running or mountain biking. If I need to do it 3 times a week. And again, with a goal in mind, that lets me get out early in the morning, put the headlamp on, brave the rain, and just go for it and see what's happening with that. Last thing is, recently I found that I have a little insomnia, and that long term, that's a problem. So good sleep hygiene is important. I know it sounds really boring, but you can start to think differently without a good night's sleep. So what I do at about 8 o'clock is I turn off any kind of church things, not checking email or anything like that. I promise myself to not read anything spiritual or religious, and to read some other narrative, some other story that's different from the work that I do, to change my thinking so that I can let it go, and I know that God will give it back to me in the morning. Okay.
El Camino Real has a large and vibrant Latinx community, which is a rapidly growing part of our diocese. Some face challenges around language, poverty, and access to appropriate theological training, especially for ordination. How would you engage, include, and support this community in all of its diversity?
Thank you. So we do have a large and vibrant Latinx community. In 2009, apparently there's a statistic that came out that said the United States, at that particular year, became the country with the second largest Latino population in the world. So a great part of the American community and our church community. So we want to bring as many resources to that as possible. My own experience in doing Latino ministry really was around my 2008 sabbatical. Martin Juarez was part of that. As I was learning Spanish in preparation for that, I spent some time in Mexico, in Cuernavaca, exploring what the church was doing in that through the Weston Priory in Vermont, and I added to that some language school experience. When I came back, I worked in the Fair Oaks Community Center in Redwood City, doing case management, and they have English-speaking and Spanish-speaking clients, and then also helping in their citizenship classes. All of that brought me great, great joy. When I was in Mexico, I was so moved by the value of family that I found there. There's a sense in which the people are one, as well as one with the land. The government doesn't own the land, the land belongs to the people. And this sense of lineage with the land itself changed me. Up to that point in my life, I was called Chad. That was my nickname. It wasn't my given name, it was my nickname. For 41 years, I was called Chad. But after I came back from Mexico, I went to my given name, which is Channing. It's my father's name and my grandfather's name. And it was important because of what I felt among those people that I connected with in Mexico, that I too wanted to have that same sense of lineage in my own life. And so I took up the name Channing, and that's the reason. I bring to you that experience because I believe multicultural work is transformational. It stretches our hearts so we grow in our capacity to love, and it makes us learn from different perspectives so we grow, as we say as a diocese, as a learning community. Our Latino population has a different work and rhythm schedule in our diocese. There are many who are called to a vocation of priesthood to the diaconate, but because of canonical requirements can't take the next step in their vocational discernment and education. I believe as a diocese that we need to challenge those barriers and find ways around those barriers. And I don't know if that's a diocesan question and conversation or a general convention conversation, but we need to be leaders in that conversation. To me, it's really about honoring the gifts of the Spirit that have come to us, to be stewards of the gifts that people have received. I use the phrase, we need to release the gifts that people have been given. So whatever is between the releasing and that person, let's get it out of the way and celebrate it, so our church will be better and grow and be more vibrant.
Many Episcopal parishes are in the position of needing to redevelop their practices, emphasis, and perhaps even their mission in order to be sustainable. What part do you think the bishop and the diocese should take in this redevelopment? Do you see this as only a money problem, or is there also a failure of leadership in the church?
Great, thanks. So we're talking about parishes here, but I think we could also be talking about our diocese. Are we in a position of needing redeveloping our practices and emphasis, perhaps on our mission, in order to be sustainable? So I think we need to be rethinking that same thing as a diocese. We say that we are a resilient and dynamic gospel presence in a rapidly changing world. That's our vision. It's great. What does it mean? Like, what's the story that you're linking to that so it takes shape and is inspiring you and guiding your choices? We have 5 strategic values: Christ-centeredness, passion, integrity, innovation, and reconciliation. All are great, but what do they mean? What are the stories that are connected to those values that we say are a part of who we are? So as bishop, what I would want to do is go around and ask you that question and have conversation. Like for me, when I hear that, I say, I want our diocese to be a place where the people belong and a means of grace. So God moves through us. You may have a different perspective on it. I want to hear that. But we begin to take shape, we put shape to the words on the page. And it starts to be just like Ezekiel and the dry bones, right? It starts to get animated. And in the last 2 communities I've served, that has been my experience. When you talk about vision and values, and you encourage everyone else to participate in that conversation, I'll say magic happens, but it's really the blessing of the Spirit. It's awesome. So I would like to see our diocese model what we're asking our parishes to do. And as our diocese does it, to ask our parishes to do the same thing. What are the vision and values that animate them? What is God's call for them? Why are they here? Why are we here? What's our part in God's unfolding story? So the way in which I would want to include all of you in that is I love to do a weekly video message at St. Andrew's. It's usually included in our weekly newsletter. It's my thoughts about the upcoming Sunday. But as your bishop, what I would want to do is say, here's what I'm learning from my time with you. Here are the stories that I've been inspired by, so that you're included in that conversation. And then you can have either local or have a conversation with me or whatever, but suddenly we start to create this great sense of hum and understanding, and all of this mix starts to happen, and now we just really understand who we are. So again, I would love to model this as a diocese and see that also happen at the local level as well.
Do you feel Episcopal bishops should engage in publicly suggesting and pressing for policy and law changes on political topics, such as immigration, gun violence, climate change, etc.? If yes, to what extent and how would you involve the diocese's clergy and laity? What would this kind of leadership look like for you, and would you expect to collaborate with other bishops?
All right, great. So, yes, I would want to collaborate with other bishops. I think, again, there's good work going on in other dioceses that I would want to benefit from. So all that connectivity and relationship, as I said, relationship is really important to me. And we find that we can share resources by being better connected to each other. So that's important. Yes, I think we should be out in front on immigration, gun violence, and climate change. As I said, we pass these resolutions at convention, but what happens to them? And again, I think the wider community is looking for us to be a source of at least wisdom on these issues. So again, I wanted to create that, involve, when I were to start with these issues, as I said before, I would go to the clericus meetings first. Apparently, the bishop has to be invited, so I hope that the bishop will be invited. But to say, let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about immigration, and let's talk about, theologically, why we should welcome the stranger into our midst. I mean, I don't think we have to go that deep into that, but we should have some kind of articulation that's pretty simple and inform that in our diocese. I recognize, at least in my own parish, we're going to have lots of feelings about that, and that's great. Let's have those feelings, and let's have a conversation about it. Let's say what it is that's underpinning the positions that we're taking. But again, to get those conversations going. I don't want to leave out lay leaders. I just don't know an organized group. Maybe it's deanery, maybe it's conferences, I'm not sure. But together, let's begin to think about who we are and who we're becoming. Last bit, just about shaping who we are as a diocese as we grow. Another underutilized part of ourselves, standing committee. I've been on the standing committee before. They're really busy right now, but if it's not a transition, they're not that busy. What if we could ask them to think about the questions that we need to be asking ourselves that are 3 to 5 years out? Like, if this is who we're becoming, what do we need to be asking ourselves in order to be prepared when we get there? To use that, they do a review of the bishop, they're reviewing our strategic plan and seeing how we're going and how we're developing in that. Let's use them in that conversation they're already engaged in to say, what are the things out in front on the horizon that we need to be thinking about? So these things, really, we're taking responsibility for them and really acting this out in a Christian way.
That's it. Thank you.
Do you have any time for
No,
questions?
you don't have any time for questions.
Oh, because we're late.
Yeah.
Can I hit that one funny story real quick?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So, funny story is this. So, very first sermon I ever preached out of seminary, right? Just graduated from seminary. I was at the Church of the Redeemer in Cincinnati, Ohio. That parish, many of the members knew me as a little kid. Okay, so that's already out there, right? Just to have that. And the Sunday was Trinity Sunday. So, right? Of course, give the new guy Trinity Sunday. It was also Heifer Fair Day. So we're raising money for a pregnant cow to send to a third world country. And I need to get all of this out in the sermon. Okay? So let's start with the theology of the Trinity. Let's crack that, right? So I kind of went through that somewhat quickly, more than just, smoke, steam, water, whatever that is, that kind of metaphor that's there. But talked about that, and then I said, look, we're doing this great thing about Heifer Project, and I just got to say, I'm really kind of struggling to put this all together. The only thing I can say is that a cow has 3 stomachs. And that is nothing to that. No, but it works, right? It doesn't work, it all falls together.